Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Not bad. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Can you hear me?
Set up over here. I can hear you loud and clear. How do we sound over here?
You're a little light.
Okay, let me see if
Hi,
I can
Maria.
use this set of headphones. 1 second.
Sure. Ooh, look at that painting. Wow. Hi, Maria. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I am doing well.
Excellent.
Very excited about this. This is fun. Ooh, look at your shirt.
I went into multidimensional.
Oh yeah, I think that's the direction of things, it seems.
Oops.
Yay! Hi, Allyson. Oh, I'm gonna unmute you. Oh, there you are.
I'll get in the picture. Right in the picture. Let's see now. What do we want to do? Want this to be?
Whoa.
Hey, yo, 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 in the house. How do I sound?
You sound great.
Oh, I hear you.
You hear me?
Awesome.
Awesome.
Let me put my sound all the way up.
Okay, and we are waiting on Suzanne and Nina. A couple more minutes.
Okay, good. No problem, John. John's helping me. He's my techno with gizmologist.
That painting behind you is so incredible.
Wow.
It looks like a quilt.
I know. Everybody says that. It's funny because I did this painting one other time in the 80s, and now I'm doing it again. And it's very different because I'm painting differently, but the difference is subtle. That's my work. It's subtle.
So
I love it. Looks like you're going and there's like this wormhole or vortex right behind you.
I know. And that's the exact experience that it comes directly out of.
Uh-huh.
You know, the psychedelic experience.
Okay. Oh, hello, audience. We are just waiting for all of the rest of the panelists to come on, getting a little behind the scenes action here while we wait. So I'm just going to do some typing. Okay.
I'm going to mute my mic, Alexis.
Sure. Yeah.
I have to be, I got to find something. I'll be right back.
Okay. All right, everyone. We're just going to hang tight. We're waiting for 2 more council members, but we're so happy to have you here. This is going to be such a juicy experience. Yeah, so it's 3 hours of teachings, wisdom weaving, play. All day I've been so excited to play with this group of leaders. So it's going to be super fun. Waiting for Suzanne Anderson. Oh. Uh-oh. Hold on 1 second. Suzanne, I think maybe you jumped on to the audience. And so you have a different link. So I'm going to send that to you right now. Hang on 1 second, Suzanne. Thanks for bearing with us, everyone. Hold on 1 moment, Suzanne. Yeah, you have a special link. All right, hang on 1 moment. And we will get going. Okay. Okay, Suzanne, I just resent that to you and just sent it to Nina again. Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks for bearing with me, Allyson and Maria. Just getting everyone on. Nina. Let's see. Okay. All right. Hang on one.
He seems to be having some technical difficulty. Oh, John, you're so nice. I'm ready to leave my post for a second too, as long as I'm doing it. I'm gonna take off and go get my.
Okay, thanks, Alexis. I'm here.
Just mute mine.
Suzanne, were you able to jump on with the link I sent in the chat? That's how you got on?
That's
Okay.
how I got on here. Mhm.
Okay, I will do that for
Yeah.
Nina as well. Almost there.
Yeah.
Okay. Nina. Okay. And the link in the chat. Okay. Okay, give me one more second. One more moment, and I'm just going to call her and have her click. All right.
Sorry about that.
No problem. This is a new format. It is all good. Yay, we're here. We did it. Whew.
Yay!
And thank you, audience members, for sticking with it. Creative leadership.
Yeah, right.
Okay, let's get started. Welcome to the Creative Empowerment Council, Creative Leadership in the Next Golden Age. My name is Alexis Cohen, and I am your host. And we have some incredible council members here. And I would love to, why don't we just go around and you can say your name and a brief introduction, and we can go from there. All right. Allyson, would you like to start?
I will start. I am Allyson Gray. I live in both Brooklyn, New York, and Wappinger, New York, where we have COSM, Chapel of Sacred Mirrors, co-founded by Alex Gray, my husband, and Allyson Gray, two artists that met in 1974 and are still together and sharing a studio all these years. So, but I have two bodies of artwork. One is my paintings, which are watercolors and acrylics and oil paintings. And my other body of work is COSM, our social sculpture. And that is where we have a radically welcoming interfaith art church and celebrating art as a spiritual practice, which is what we're doing. And I'm leaving right now as our 7-day painting intensive. So that's what we do here, practice art.
Thank you.
That sounds so lovely.
Oh.
Maria, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Alexis. I'm so happy to be here. So I'm Maria Christina Gutierrez, and I am born and raised in the Bay Area, California. My ancestors' bones are in the ground there, as well as in northern Mexico. My people come from Huichol, Mayan, as well as Highland Scots, and Dutch and English, as well as Arab and Spanish and French. So I'm a rainbow child, absolutely. And my life has been devoted to being a bridge person. My life kind of began, launched into being a study of power, right use of will, and the misuse of power without me even meaning it to be so. Starting with my father, who misused power quite a bit, but was also a leader in his minority community. And so as I developed, I studied leadership. I studied group facilitation. I was in and out of spiritual groups, academic groups on faculties, and sustainable community, consensus decision making, you know, on and on and on. And now I feel like I have this kind of synthesized, created my own curriculum in authentic transformational leadership. So how to be impeccable, how to be grounded, and how to be multidimensional. And that's what I'm really excited about. So my school is Sacred Future, the School for the Transformation of Consciousness and Culture. And we are a global school. We have students from all over the world.
Beautiful. Thank you, Maria. Nina. Oh, we'll unmute you.
Unmute, okay. You unmute me and I'll unmute me and then we can gab. I'm Nina Simons and I'm speaking to you from Santa Fe, New Mexico, from the mountains outside of Santa Fe. And I was born and raised in New York City, but I've been here in New Mexico for about 35 years. And I am on a journey that began as I sought where I could serve to help transform the world. And it started out like Allyson in partnership with my husband and partner, Kenny Osabel. And we co-founded an organization almost 30 years ago called Pioneers, which we have managed to keep going all these years. Hallelujah. And since then, I think about 10 years into Pioneers, I began realizing that while I loved it and wanted to continue to serve it, I also had other assignments and other callings. And when I was about 40, about 20 years ago, I started really exploring my relationship to gender and realized how much it was affecting, how much my womanhood was affecting my experience of leadership, my experience of how I could grow best into my own assignment, and began exploring that rather rigorously, and wound up starting to convene women leaders, diverse women leaders. In 2003, I gathered my first group of women called Unreasonable Women for the Earth, which was 35 women who were wildly different and diverse in every way you can imagine, to try to see how together we could help affect the course of civilization. And so I feel like I've been on I continue a big, long journey that's about leadership and women. Since that time, I've learned a great deal about women and the divine feminine and how women can strengthen each other and what a force we can be in the world. And in fact, it's the most hopeful thing I know. And so I'm really happy to be here with you all. I thank you, Alexis, for your choice of colleagues and look forward to our time together.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Suzanne. Oh, I think we're unmute you. There you go.
Thank you very much. Great. Well, I love that just to take in the others first. And Maria, good to meet you. My name is Suzanne Anderson, and I like what you said, Maria, about being a bridge person. I've always said that about the role I play and culture, really. And I think that's what I'll say about myself. Probably now about 20 years ago that I was I'm Canadian, actually. I'm based in Seattle, which now more than ever, I like to claim my Canadian citizenship, given the situation here in the United States. And I was based at the time in Paris, and two things happened concurrently. One, I was a management consultant, leadership consultant at that time, and leadership has always been my interest. How do we steward or steer or guide whatever? In that case, I was interested in organizations, but I always had a deep spiritual orientation at the same time. And around the same time that I saw the limits for women operating as one of the boys inside a masculine model of leadership, I had my own experience in Bali. Really was gifted with an awakening through an energy, a divine feminine energy I have come to know as Kuan Yin. But at the time, I had no real context for the experience I had, which was 2 days of being in a state of a union with her. But during that time, an inquiry landed in me as would I help to midwife the divine feminine or the deep feminine on earth? And to which every cell in my body said yes. But then a few days later, when I started to put myself back together, then it was the big question about what the heck did I just sign up for and what does it mean? That was really the turning point for me. I could see the pain point in culture in women I was working with in leadership, inside that old limit or old model. And I could see that this impulse was ready to be born on earth. So I followed that thread back to graduate school to study women's development and do my programs I've run in universities so I could actually have it be legitimate research. And then 2 years ago published a book with all that we really discovered about a new pathway for women that can accelerate our this sort of birth of a new way of being on the planet. So we're sharing a bit about that with you and being in conversation with everybody there.
Thank you so much. This is so incredible. Before I introduce myself a little bit more, I just want to check in with the audience. Can you hear us well? Can someone just type in yes, if you can hear us, if the microphones, okay, great, awesome, thank you. All right, well, thank you for these beautiful introductions. So my name is Alexis Cohen, and I am an artist, a creativity mentor, and a shamanic practitioner. And it's so interesting. I love being in groups and really listening to what part of myself I'm going to bring forward. It always feels like it's a different part that wants to speak. And what's really coming forward right now is the moment that I felt initiated by the divine feminine. And it was a very specific moment where I was sitting in a childbirth class, and I was learning about what had happened to birth and how birth had been co-opted, and this deep creative power that is innate to women was squelched, stolen, really co-opted. And it was like lightning bolts through my head, and I knew that this was the work that I needed to do, that my work on the planet was to support women in reconnecting and strengthening their relationship with their creative power. And I entered into birth work as a student of creativity and attended hundreds of births, and really felt as if I was sitting at the feet of the divine feminine over and over and over and over again. And I learned how creative power moves through a woman's body, how she can open and surrender to this power or shut it down, and what happens to her and the process when that happens. And I started to, in order to really support women on this level, I started to do this deeper work on myself, and became a student of creative power running through my body and my system as I was creating. And it was deeply intense. I healed myself as a blocked artist at that time as I was reconnecting with my creative power. So now I support other women in doing that, in birthing their creative vision. And really the intention for bringing all of these incredible women together is we're birthing something. We're birthing this new earth, and we are all midwifing this. And so the topic is creative leadership, but I really feel like we all have the potential to be leaders, that we all have the potential to use our voice and to step into our power and inspire others to do the same, which inspires others to do the same. And it creates this power, this wave that, this catalytic energy, bringing us to the next level on the planet. And it's birth, it's uncomfortable and glorious and wonderful. And a lot of people are feeling it on the planet right now. And I know that these women have a lot to teach us today. So I'm so excited to jump in, and I'm just going to, actually, before we go into the format, I would love to just do a brief grounding exercise so we can all get on the same page here and tune in to the power and the container of this council. And everyone who is participating, the audience members, you are absolutely going to have time to share. So we are all creating this container together. Why don't you take a moment and close your eyes. And feel the surface underneath you. Just feeling the earth supporting you. Holding you. And just feeling the depth and expansiveness of the earth. And just noticing your breath. Noticing the rhythm of your breath. And with each breath, just allow yourself to drop in more and more deeply to your internal landscape. And really just take this moment to connect with yourself. How are you feeling in this moment? Take a deep breath in, breathe into your heart. It's gently breathing into your heart. Just knowing that this is the space and the container to truly and deeply listen to your heart. Its feeling, its rhythm. And feeling all of the hearts that are in this circle with us. the web, the wisdom web that we are weaving together, and the symphony of hearts. All focused in the same place. And just take a moment and set your intention for this council, for this circle. Maybe there's a question that is arising for you, or some clarity you are opening to. Or maybe you've never considered yourself a leader, but you were called here. There's something deep inside bringing you forward here. This is a space for listening to each other and to yourself, to the earth and everything underneath. What is being said and what isn't being said. And it is all here for you. So taking a nice deep breath and feeling the support of the earth, and when you're ready, coming back to the circle and opening your eyes. And so I'm just going to share with you the format of our time together, and we'll jump right in. Actually, I wanted to share that before, a little bit before this call, the guests we were emailing about being really receptive and open to what comes through in this container. And so instead of presentations, it's just whatever is coming through. So this is really exciting because we're all tuning into the collective here and the wisdom and the healing and the magic that is here with us. So the format is 2 speakers will be featured each 50 minutes. And I will definitely keep an eye on the time. And so each speaker has about 10 to 15 minutes to flow, whatever it is that, whatever teaching, whatever it is that you want to share, that is your time. And, you know, depending on our time, I might ask some questions after that, and then the next speaker will go. And we'll have a little break to stretch, to grab some tea, some water, and then the next segment, the next 2 speakers will be featured. And then there'll be a break after that. So the first 2 hours, same format. And then the last hour is purely question and answer. So audience, this is your time. This is where you get to ask the whole council or specific guests questions. And also during the break, after we get back from the breaks, there's going to be special gifted giveaways. So definitely make sure you come back after those breaks. All right, so I'm going to switch the speaker view. Our first speaker up is Maria. Ooh, Maria, are you unmuted there? Okay, there you go.
Aloha.
Hello. Oops. So whenever you are ready.
Wow, okay.
Whenever you are ready. Yeah, if you want to introduce you introduced yourself already, but if there's anything more that you would like to share with the audience about your work, anything else?
I can just weave it all in. So I'm coming with my passion and this topic of leadership being multidimensionality in leadership. So I want to speak a little bit about why multidimensionality and what does this mean. And so I'll just start with my own story, just briefly. So I grew up in a family that was there's a lot of trauma, and there was a lot of abuse. And I grew up a very sensitive child, psychically, to energies, and I didn't know what was happening to me. And because the environment around me wasn't safe, I had no kind of healthy adult mirror to understand what was happening to me. So this includes, astral projections, visions, psychic knowing, seeing dead people, like these paranormal experiences, and also being, attacked on the astral plane by entities and all these different things that a child of 4, 5, 6, etc., has no context for. I was in Christian school, Catholic school, so of course there's really no context there, but at least there was Jesus and the resurrection. And so that was like, oh, somebody went into their light body. Okay, I get that, right? So as I grew up, I found I sought after teachers, right? In many different cultures around the world, and found my way through this initiation process as a priestess, really, right? Medicine woman priestess, where my modern dominant patriarchal culture, there was no place for me to find formal, society recognized, authenticated, acknowledged credential for what was happening to me and my gifts and abilities. So I found my way through many holistic healing certifications and eventually a master's in counseling psychology. I came to the point where I self-validated, and I matured enough in my psyche to be able to do that. And that's a journey in and of itself for women, right, in our culture. And so I did get to the place where one day I stood and looked in the mirror, and I just recognized all these events of my life had been forming me and molding me. And yet it was my higher self, actually. It was my own soul initiating me into my mission, like what I came here to do, to remember who I'm here to serve, and to get on with it already, right? So until I could self-validate, I was very much like 50% outside of myself, looking for that validation in spiritual teachers especially, and in men especially, because of the father wound within me, because my father was the leader, dominator in my family. So once I self-validated and just, it's like, whoa, all my energy just magnetically like came into this center column within my being, and everything changed. The other thing that really changed me was my ancestral roots, and having an opportunity through one of my native teachers to turn my gaze inward at myself, because I really didn't have an interest in studying ancestry before that. And this was literally in graduate school in my mid-30s that I finally turned and looked inward at my own epigenetics and genealogy and said, wait a minute, all these abilities came from somewhere. Where did they come from? Turns out I'm from a long line of full body trance mediums, channels, and medicine people. Isn't that interesting, right? So now there's a context for my whole life in this horizontal world, 3D plane. And then there's the soul plane of identity as a star child, star seed, and all of that, which those memories come in as the years pass, more and more remembering. So this all informed how I hold circle, how I teach, how I attract students and clients. My resonance field attracts people who are out of control mediums, who have these out of control or undeveloped paranormal abilities, such as telepathy and clairvoyance and telekinesis, etc., etc. So I tend to attract these people who are looking for clean, healthy, grounded mentorship and a safe place to explore these sixth sense abilities. right now on the planet, I feel that we are, so this is kind of my manifesto. So right now on the planet, I feel like one of the most important things we can do is get into our bodies. And if you take, an assessment of all the people on the planet and like, okay, gauging to what percentage is each person actually embodied and inhabiting their body as a soul, and you're going to find that most people are pretty dissociated and that the body is not a safe place. And I want to say, especially for women. And so again, here's like a passion of mine is to help women get into their bodies. And I do this through teaching them energy medicine. So I believe that we cannot be a clear channel for our soul purpose to stream through us and out into the world until we really get into our bodies, right? And so that kind of contradicts, earlier, whatever esoteric, metaphysical, new age thought that says like you're really like opening and coming up into just the upper chakras to know, connect with the all that is. And I'm saying, heck no, especially if you're a woman, get down there, root into your womb, go into the portals within your own being, stop looking outside of yourself for validation and acknowledgement for who you are and your mission, because your whole life path could be co-opted and detoured off that way. And so come back home, go through the own inner portals and anchor in, drop those anchors, right? Drop the anchors from every chakra down to the core of the earth, inhabit your skin. And once you do that, there's like this locking in, hand in glove of spirit in cells. There's this locking in and this deep, it's like these codes start waking, like popping awake everywhere inside of us. Bing, 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 right? Whoa! And we come into this remembering of what we came here to do, because we're finally, it allows us to be this finely tuned mind, body, spirit, complex vehicle matrix, right? For our mission to be fulfilled and for us to fulfill our potential. So in developing myself as a clear channel, it was a rocky road, absolutely. I went through a lot of, so not only human beings misuse power, but entities misuse power too. And so there was a lot of trickery, a lot of seduction, into other realms and identities, and you should be this, and you should want this, and you should want power for yourself, and glorification. And so that initiation process was very, very humbling. I multiple times stepped out of spiritual seeking, put my spiritual path, you could say, not the core of it, but whatever practices I was using, put them away for years at a time, just so I could recenter and clear myself of all voices, of this is the right path, this is the direct path to awakening, this way, that way. Like, okay, I need to just be quiet. I just need silence. And I can't take in any more stimulus from the outside. And that was probably the most powerful decision I could have, and self-loving, self-respecting decisions I could have ever made for myself, were those moments of unplugging from the dominant culture's should and shouldn'ts. And from that quiet, still point place within me, that's where I would kind of gently do my inner work, my self-forgiveness, my deep grief work, my coming home work, and then deepen into the forgiveness for others. Then I could step back out into the world, into spiritual traditions and practices, and not be swayed by the shoulds and shouldn'ts, within myself, really. So to be a clear channel, I had to give everything away, like become nothing really, and then come back in and reorganize myself. And then I could channel in a really pristine, I want to say pristine higher consciousness that was pure love, just pure love. And so some of the women here talked about the moment that the divine feminine called you and you answered. So for me, that was the moment for me. And this was probably it wasn't even that long ago, probably in about 2014, 2015, when the Great Mother Universal Presence came in, and I began channeling this frequency regularly, even on stages, at conferences. And I'm so grateful for all of the humbling inner work that came before that I could come to that place of wanting nothing but to be awake, embodied, and of service. So this multidimensional leadership, and what I'm after for women in particular, is the self-validation, is this fierce devotion to one's own unique signature energy, and to get curious about what that is and how that is not like anybody else's energy. And I love the image of like, multifaceted polygon, and each facet is another being, like 7 billion facets, all the human beings, and then even more with all of the animals and the nature beings on this planet. We all carry a unique signature frequency, a song, and it's all harmonic with each other. And how do we do the work of finding our own song and resonance field, so that we can sync up with the overriding or underlying chorus that is happening on our planet, in our solar system, in our galaxy, in our universe. I get very excited about that. And I see that truly is the journey of this, what I see as this quantum leap. You said birthing the new earth. We're all midwives for this birthing of this new earth. And I kind of use the ascension languaging of, like, we are graduating. We are right now graduating from upper 3D, and we are graduating into, like, from separation and duality, from us and them, and learning about power and misuse of power, and we're coming into this sacred marriage where the polarities, instead of moving away from each other, are coming back, and they're just like, whoa, orgasmic collision, and and this birthing of a whole new consciousness on our planet. And this I would call, we're moving into fourth dimensionality as a whole planet in our solar, and that affects the whole solar system, right? And so who are we? How do we live into that now? Who are we now as fourth dimensional beings? What percentage of us is already 4D? Because we're the whole spectrum. We're 5D, 6D, 7D, 8D, right? We're the whole spectrum of reality, perception, and consciousness. And we're kind of just like, we have to do the forgiveness work and making amends and atoning, and the Ho'oponopono prayer, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And come into, like, integration of our third dimensionality and our whole journey around power and right use of will, so that then we can step fully into 4D, which is, within us, the heart chakra, which is community, collaboration, the interconnection of all. We know we are one with all life, and we make decisions from that place. That's our throne. That is our vantage point of, viewing ourselves and everything. And that's a really different way to be planetary together. That's a really different resonance field for the human consciousness, the dominant human the majority of human consciousness. So when I say bridge person, it's like, that's what I'm talking about truly in the more esoteric terms, is helping. My work as a light worker is assisting in this, is being part of the wave. I have to be true to myself so that my resonance field can be a very positive one, like a tuning fork, that the people that I encounter that are near me, my students, my clients, that I can sustain in myself. I know how to sustain in myself a resonance field of love, of respect, of connection. We are all one, unified field, so that somebody comes near me and they start in training to my resonant field. That's my deepest desire, is to be able to sustain that in myself. And of course, I'm the whole spectrum. I'm up and down and everywhere, because I'm growing and evolving and learning. And we all are. But wouldn't it be amazing if we were consciously choosing, to uplift the people who are around us? So to kind of like bottom line it and summarize here, in order to, our true nature is multidimensional. Our true nature is multidimensional. And we know this because when we dream, we are outside time and space. And that's a part of us. We know that because when we change our brain, we have multiple brain waves that we can access through shamanic states of awareness, through drumming, through dancing, through whatever it is. We are multidimensional beings. That is our true nature. And to live in a multidimensional awareness as a normalized state takes the work of being present. It really is presence, because if we are not in a state of presence, we cannot access the portals within our beings to all the other realms. That comes from the present moment. That comes from being presence. Once we can bring ourselves presence, the portals can open and we can be embodied. So this doesn't work unless we're fully grounded, anchored in our bodies. And then we have access. We have access to all the timelines. We can travel back and heal trauma, wounding. We can literally shift the vibration of timelines. We can connect with our future self. We can bring back information. We can talk to our ancestors. We can connect with our higher dimensional selves, our parallel lives. I mean, the opportunities are limitless. And that comes from presence, the unlimited state within ourselves. So leading from that place is my greatest joy. Ashe, thank you.
Thank you so much. That is so powerful. So I have a question for you from your presentation here. So, when you're talking about your own path of becoming a clear channel, and this the relationship between your internal process and your external process, I think this is a really important piece to talk about here. And I'm curious if this is going to be one of the underlying themes, because folks who are having the experiences that you're talking about are highly sensitive, right? And so most of the time, highly sensitive, and I definitely can consider myself a highly sensitive person, it's this wanting to feel safe and be in our own world, right? And so the topic of this council, it's about leadership, and it's what you're talking about here, like the importance of caring for yourself so you can then come out into the world. So before we move on, I would just love to hear from you what you would say to the folks that are highly sensitive but are feeling this call to step forward in this bigger way.
Yeah. I would say, again, it comes to self-validation. And there's something profound in giving ourselves, especially as women, permission to have healthy boundaries, permission to fully inhabit our bodies, permission to proclaim that our bodies are safe places for us, permission to take up space, permission to express our authentic response out into the world, our expression, our voice, our manifestos. Permission is a huge factor. So in what areas of your life do you actually give yourself permission to be leaderful, and why? And in what areas of your life does it feel risky and scary to be leaderful? And if it is scary, what are the stories? What are the voices saying? Right? Can you write those down just without editing? Like make a whole list of, if I step into leadership in this realm of my life, the voices say this will happen to me. I'll lose this, et cetera, et cetera. So for many women, if I come into leaderfulness around money in my life, I'll lose all my friends. People will want to mooch off me, If I come into leadership spiritually in my life, if I proclaim I'm a medicine woman or a priestess, I'm afraid, oh, right, and then all the past lives, I'll be burned at the stake. I'm afraid I'll be called a fraud. I'm afraid, right? So we need to really illuminate the voices and the stories. And then once we have those stories, we can really see that these are the ways that we are going to sleep. Well, I don't know if going to sleep, but it's like the ways that we are kind of like plugged into what I call a reverse grid. So plugged into the dominant patriarchy grid of information, right? Definitions about who we are and who we can and can't be in the world that really do not serve us or anything or our planet. As long as we're plugged into that reverse grid, we are feeding the grid. And it's fear that feeds it. It's our fear. The grid invokes fear in us, and then our fear feeds the grid, right? Vicious circle. How do we unplug from that grid and start telling a different story about who we are, what we're capable of, without limitation, without all the limitation and the conditioning and the brainwashing even, right? And we plug into a harmonic grid, which is the actual organic natural grid around our planet, the human consciousness grid that is harmonic with the universe and nature, right? So what does that grid feel like? The Anastasia books are wonderful in that way. If anybody's read them, I haven't, but I've read some of them, parts of some. And it's like, what is it for women to give ourselves permission to take as much time as we need within ourselves to find our harmony, to hear our own resonance, and then to self-validate that. And even if we have to do that, privately at first, or just with our closest friends. I had a moment, I was in a women's circle for 6 years with the same women. And it took me 3 years of trusting these women to finally admit how difficult it was for me to let them see me and let their love in. It was so dangerous for me to let love in. And so I asked them if they would just look at me and say, I love you, and stare at me. And they did that for me. And because of my trauma, I went into full body shaking and convulsions and fell on the floor like that, like just shaking and screaming. And they wouldn't leave. They stayed with me and kept saying, "We love you, we see you, you're safe. We love you, we see you, you're safe." That unlocked an incredible amount of locked down in the reverse grid energy for me. An incredible amount. For you, Alexis, you said your creative energy, you were devoted to your own creative, allowing your own creative energy to create through you and feeling that. That's same thing. So permission, and creating and knowing safety is an inside job.
Yep.
And we get to choose it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Maria. Beautiful. Okay, so our next guest, Suzanne.
Oh, well, thank you, Maria. That's great. What's really delightful, and I found this when I had the chance to speak with the other panelists as well earlier, is that I think there's some wave, there's definitely a wave moving that many of us are plugging into. So we call it an aquifer, maybe. And so it's really lovely to hear very similar resonant language, Maria, of what you're saying, and that although I've never met you, and but I think where I'll start, given what you've sort of initiated here in the field, is to underline my own strong sense, as you've said, that we are in the midst of initiation. I often say that I think we all, actually, men and women, but I'm going to say women have a particular role here, and I'll say more about that in a moment, are in the midst of a profound rite of passage. And like any real initiation or true initiation, there is sacrifice involved. There is a kind of bowing down required in the moving into something new. This is true in any original cultures who used initiation. We've lost this for the most part in our Western culture, that there actually could be healthy ways to guide these initiatory times. But I have the sense, and this has been my own research. By the way, it's worse. I mean, in terms of being a bridge person, when I realized there was something to explore about women and development, like how women actually emerge. And I realized it wasn't just how do we fit ourselves more effectively inside the masculine paradigm, but that we were actually going somewhere new. I made sure to put my programs inside a university setting. This was a way that I wanted to bridge the research that I wanted to do with the mainstream, because I think, and in fact I'm quite sure now, that the work that we have to do as women right now needs to translate in terms of how we actually show up in the world the way it is. If we are going to make the changes which we are going to have to make and shape the world during these times, we have to be in the world, not all exiting to remote places. Yeah. So that was really important to me, that that the consideration of what is actually happening could be validated in a way. So it's kind of how you hold both the mainstream paradigm and one that has absolutely, well, it's kind of transcending, it includes that paradigm, but it's really breaking way outside of that box. Yeah. And this, in my own work of basically, I'd say trial and error. I started out with the first program I ever ran was called Women's Integral Leadership Circle. And the integral model, which some of you may be familiar with, was a very good grounding model for me because it was the first one I'd seen that actually brought in all dimensions of reality. And I I loved that map, to be able to examine, what's missing, what are we not looking at? And I had this view of gender inside of it, or the feminine and the masculine, that was quite simplistic. Actually, it was the place where I started. But over the course of 10 years, really began to unpack, what did I mean by that? What do I mean by feminine and masculine? And initially, I used other words even, because I think feminine and masculine can get confused in terms of gender, male and female. And I think we're going to some places with gender that we have, way outside our current boxes right now. So in a moment, I want to talk about feminine and masculine, but I am speaking about how those two primary yin or yang forces co-arise inside men and women. But what I see, what we were tracking in terms of, how do women develop then? What is the next level of this development that actually is going to give birth to a way of being that's never been before? How does that fit with with the whole move of evolution? And my co-author, Susan Cannon, was doing her research at the time in looking at culture and how culture unfolds. So we really were watching these two co-arise together, both our own development as women, and how does that fit inside the great story, the narrative of evolution itself. And I go into much more of this in our book, but what I just want to lay out now is, if we go way back, we can see what we call the first feminine epic came in about 50,000 years. We had this epic. And I'm going to just speak to what we would say 6 waves that have happened since the beginning of time, of human Homo sapien, that pretty much all futurists or historians would agree have occurred. These are waves of consciousness and culture. And every time a new wave comes in, it brings in a new consciousness, certain kind of complexity and different capacities, just different leadership paradigms. That's how that works. And the reason that the waves come in and shift is because the consciousness that created the issues in the culture simply isn't adequate to meet that challenge. So evolution, there's push again. Evolution urges consciousness to expand, for the perspective to become wider and deeper. So that's happened. We know we can map that over six cycles so far. And the first we call the feminine epic was the first 2 waves came in. That was about 50,000 years. And then we have at about 3000 AD, we have about the BCE, we have the first masculine wave come in. And that wave then follows with 4 other waves. And some of you will know those waves as if you map any of the culture that go through the warrior wave, the traditional wave, the modern wave, postmodern wave. Well, that's 5,000 years then of a masculine worldview. And where we would say we are now is when the postmodern wave came in, mid-60s, we would say that's the beginning of the second feminine epic. And it has a very dynamic energy, in contrast to the first 50,000 years, which was much more mother-like and all-containing. This energy is very dynamic. It's breaking things up, shaking things up. That was the sexual revolution, the rock and roll, sex-free, love, drugs, kind of wanting to bust up the 5,000 years of patriarchy. And now, this is key to say, because we're in a transition from the 6th wave to the 7th wave, which some are calling the integral wave. And what we absolutely know is every time there is a move between waves, it's very chaotic. There's a lot of disintegration of the old. There's a lot of shake-up, rock and roll time. What we also know is that it takes a small population, it's actually it's not everybody, who are on this frothy edge of evolution, who can hold a vision of a new world emerging in the midst of everything breaking down. And so this is really important to say, because I think it situates some of what you were saying, Maria, and certainly what I do in my own work, which is there is suffering right now. We are pressing up against the limitations of what I call an old operating system. And it was an operating system that was very effective. It wasn't a mistake. You know, I don't believe life made a wrong turn. That was evolution unfolding. But it simply has reached the end of its, that paradigm is no longer adequate. We actually need now the deep feminine to come into relationship with a healthy masculine in a way it never has been before. It's not about going back to what we've had. It's about actually holding space for something really different. So what I find when I speak, or when people, you know, read my book, one of the things I hear the most commonly is a relief to know that what they're experiencing is not a regression, or that there's something wrong with me, that I am suffering right now, that I am, you know, and there are many ways that I see that in my own work when women come in to see me or in my programs. It's this combination of both. I can't seem to see how to get my inside aligned with my outside, and there's suffering in that dynamic. And I have a longing for a new way of being. I can see something, but I can't touch it yet and taste it yet. Now, what I absolutely agree with what you're saying, Maria, about the need to come down and in, and that's the language I use a lot. At this point, the work we have to do then, once we recognize ourselves as women on this frothy edge of evolution, in the rough and tumble of it all, we have to, some of us, be willing to do the work to shift the codes, and I talk about them in this way. And there are old embodied codes after 5,000 years, you can be sure there would be, hypermasculine now, and they are deep in the cells here. So this is not, it's not adequate for, you know, a positive affirmation on the mirror, although intention is super powerful, and we can, you know, learn to harness that potent visual capacity. But if we aren't also doing the work of unhooking from the deep shadows that were a part of that earlier code, we will not be able to make the changes. We have a kind of homeostatic stasis that goes on in the psyche. So the work I do, and that I'm really interested in helping women do, it's an accelerated way, because I think ultimately with time, evolution is going to urge this anyway. The feminine is going to come online. There is going to be a sacred marriage, and we are going to give birth to ways of being that have never, ever existed before, almost a new species. But I'm interested in the time we have, given the limited resource on this earth. Therefore, some of us have to be willing to do this deep work. And it requires kind of turning back toward the developmental traumas that occurred, both in our early family of origin, because we lived as women inside cultures that haven't validated women, and because we have the epigenetic pass down that comes to us. So in all those levels, we have trauma. Now the trauma body actually can be our friend. This was a very wise way that we learned to get love, safety, and belonging. We wired together a particular way of being, the head, the heart, and the hara, all one system. We have a good structure that actually allows us to come into the world and exist as a human. But that conditioned self and the conditioned mind is now a limitation to the expansion of consciousness that simply wants to happen. So the only way to really, in my opinion, or the one key way, is we have to be willing to do that metabolizing while we are bringing online some of these higher frequencies. If not, you get, I think you were referring to this, Maria, perhaps anyway, in what you were talking about coming into the body, you can get the spiritual bypass happening. And I was certainly, put my hand up and say I did that. I don't regret the mystery schools I was a part of and all the ways I learned to work at these very high vibratory realms, but they hadn't come all the way into the body. And we have to come all the way into the body now and do that other the other work of the unhooking, the unwinding from that old structure. So maybe I'll just finish my own little piece here by saying, by using this, because I love the words of Thich Nhat Hanh, who speaks to this. And while so many of us are tilted naturally and need to be toward the world and taking care of the world, we see ourselves as agents of change. We want to come into the world as women who can really shape these times. I call us Mysterial Woman. The name of my book is The Way of the Mysterial Woman, Upgrading How You Live, Love, and Lead. Mysterial simply is a word that was invented because I couldn't find a word to describe this new species coming in, basically. But, you know, for those of us that are doing this and are the ones on the edge of evolution, because we see that we have to bring a new consciousness into our beautiful blue planet. And he says, Thich Nhat Hanh says this: go back and take care of yourself. Your body needs you. Your feelings need you. Your perceptions need you. Your suffering needs you to acknowledge it. Go home and be there for all these things. Yeah, I think I'll just let those words rest. My time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You're bringing to mind, and you know, what I would see with women a lot in birth, and when I'm working with initiatory processes with women and with myself, how without fail, every time I have experienced stepping into more power, opening up to more power, or supporting a woman and opening up to more power, a layer of wounding or trauma is there. It's arising for healing. And how there's this, you know, we're talking about, again, seeing the filter of birth, right? Something is emerging. Something is also, there's death. And I'm really hearing that. And again, this is another thread that I'm hearing throughout, the tending to the grief. Yeah. And the importance of it. And I know before we've talked in some of our other conversations about the discomfort of this process that we're in, and transparently stepping on this path to leadership, I have cried the most uncomfortable cries I've ever experienced. It's like this grief that is coming from my toes. Like it's just so deep. And I feel grateful for the containers and the people and the ways that I can allow that to move through. What would you say to the women, the people who are starting to touch in on this right now? What kind of support can they call in to move through this? Or if there's anything you would like to share about that process, the process of tending grief?
Thank you. There are two things actually. And the first thing is, I think naming, as I was saying before, naming this moment helps normalize that. So that's the first thing. You are not alone. The second thing I want to say, and this is something I think you were touching on, Maria, you said something about being emptied out at some point. But when you said that, what your own experience, I thought, I will share a tiny bit about my own experience of that. I have found in the students that come to me and the women I work with, this is pretty common right now. I don't really know many of us that aren't having the experience. And for myself, I would say there's a humbling process going on. Right when we'd finished the research and the book was ready to be published, actually in 2012. And we're coming back to run our first program after a couple of years of taking time to write. And on January the 3rd, I came home to find my husband dead. And And all I can say, in the simple way to say this, would be all of the structures of my life as I knew them, all of the fields of belonging that mattered to me, were gone within 6 months. I mean, literally gone, almost like a Tibetan sand painting mandala, where there's that beautiful process, and at the end, the monks just clear it with their hands. I had a beautiful life with a beloved husband and an estate on a beautiful island near Seattle, and a community, and where we had people come and did retreats. And this would never have been something that would have been imaginable for me or for anybody who knew me. And I now feel, I would say the first thing that I did, and partly because I know this work so well, was to surrender. A good friend of mine who lives on the same island, Michael Mead, who's done a lot of work with myth and ritual, with men especially, said to me, came over the next day, and in my work and in my book, I work with a myth, a Greek myth, a descent myth, the Persephone Demeter myth, where she is pulled into Hades, as you may know if you know the myth, Persephone, while she's picking flowers. And the reason I work with that myth is because, of course, when she's pulled in, it's this enormous transformative process that occurs, and she emerges. Although she resists it at first, she ultimately reemerges as goddess of the upper world and the underworld, which is, to me, what we need to be doing now as women today. But the resistance that she did at the beginning is what is not helpful. And Michael said to me, one thing is you are Queen Persephone. You know how to go down. Because with every program I run, we do a ritual process of taking women into the depths. But you are going to go to a depth you've never been before. So go, and we bless you as you go. And to really not resist, that's probably what I would say right now, it's like, you're giving birth, you don't clamp down, you'll let the contractions come, you will bear down, but you will be with the suffering. And I think that's what Thich Nhat Hanh is saying in that quote, really we come back and are tender with ourselves. And that's probably what I, leave this piece with, Alexis, is just our own self-compassion for the courage actually to give birth to ourselves so that we can give birth to a really new world. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And that's so powerful. And it's, I hear we have to become the vessel that can birth this new earth, these new ways.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, why don't we take a break? A nice time for a little stretching, a little sandwich. We'll come back at exactly 10 minutes. So I'm in Los Angeles, so 3:30 Pacific Standard Time, and we have two special gifts to two lucky audience members. So definitely come back, and we'll do a little gift giveaway. So 10 minutes, stretch your legs, and we'll be back. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Hi, Nina. I'm going to do a little gift giveaway action. Okay. All right. So, lovely audience. This is what we're going to do. So, for the first person, so you see the chat. Can someone say, oh, awesome. Some folks are chatting here. Okay, so in that chat box next to your screen, you're going to type in, so the first person to guess the right number between 1 and 10, you're going to get a free gift. So our first gift is from Maria. And she is offering, let me see, I just have that. She's offering her ebook, which is so exciting. Maria, there you are. Can you say the name of your free gift giveaway that we're going to do right here?
Yeah. So this is an ebook that I wrote for my students years and years ago. It is called Authentic Leadership: The 7 Phases of Safe and Effective Ritual.
Awesome. Oh, look at people are already guessing. This is so exciting. Okay, I'm going to pick one from the hat right now, okay? The true hat. 2. Okay, who guessed 2? All right.
BJ.
BJ. Hi, BJ. Okay, so BJ, to get your free gift, why don't you email me? Hi. So here is my email address. I'm popping it in right here, and you can send me your email address, and we will send that to you. Okay?
Yay!
Yay! Why don't you give a thumbs up if you got that, BJ? Or something. Okay, awesome. Yay! You won. Awesome. Okay, so our next gift is from Suzanne. Suzanne, would you like to share what your gift is?
Yeah, this is my book called The Way of the Mysterious Woman, Upgrading How You Live, Love, and Lead. It's a 3-time award-winning book. The first part is a lot of the theory laid out that I was just giving to you very briefly. And the second part is case studies from all our students of how you actually can go through this accelerated pathway for women, the sequence, the 5 different archetypes, and lots of practices to help you along the way. So I'm going to mail you one of these.
Awesome. Okay, guys, ready, go. All right, audience, just pick a number 1 through 10. Go for it. Hat. 7.
Oh, that's my favorite number.
Who's the first 7? It looks like T. Pregon. Is that right? Yay, you did it. Okay, awesome. So, so to my email address, I'm typing it in again. Just send me your actual physical address, and I will get that to Suzanne, and we'll get that to you.
Look forward to sending it to you.
Yay! Okay, so you guys, it's definitely going to be up to you to email me, so you can get these gifts. Okay. Beautiful. Yay! All right. Now, I am so excited to introduce our next speaker, Nina Simons. Hello. We're going to unmute you.
There, let me unmute myself. Okay. Hey. Well, what a treat to follow you 2 extraordinary women. There are so many themes that are just moving through me and resonating deeply with my own experience and my own learning. And I think the strongest one, in a way, is what you named, Suzanne, of the integration of the underworld and the overworld, of the invisible and the visible, which Maria spoke to so much as well. I think for me, I would start out by saying my first awakening about how my gender affected my leadership came to me through a film, which is online, and it's called The Burning Times. And it's a rather old film, Canadian made by some wonderful women. And you can look it up, you can Google it, and you can watch it for free. And I would highly recommend it. I saw it more than 20 years ago, and it blew me away and completely transformed my worldview. And, you know, in short, it tells the story of the 300 to 500 year period in European history where, depending on which historian you believe, somewhere between 50,000 and several million women were systematically persecuted and tortured and burned for the supposed crime of being witches. And what happened for me when I saw it was that a number of things made sense for the first time to me. There was a deep fear that I had held in my bones of speaking my truth in public. And suddenly, as I saw this story so beautifully recreated in the film, I had a sense that I had inherited the trauma of those times in my bones, and it made sense to me. And I've always been someone who presents a very courageous front and persona, and inwardly carries lots of insecurity and fear. And so that was kind of profound. But the other thing that was true for me was that I had already been co-producing Bioneers with my husband and partner, Kenny Osabel, for several years when I saw it. And I suddenly, so I had been learning a lot about both the ecological and social challenges that we face. This was in the early 90s, and we were convening this conference really to talk about not only the challenges, but the solutions. And it was a little like bringing together a tribe of people, which I think Allyson knows a lot about, who suddenly recognize, oh my gosh, I found my tribe, I found my community. And so when I saw The Burning Times, it was the first time that all the ecological and social issues that we faced made sense within one lens, which was the imbalance of the masculine and the feminine. And so, as Suzanne referred to, I realized it on at least two dimensions. You know, I saw it not only in terms of why is it hard for women to wholeheartedly embrace leadership at this time, but also what I saw was that everything in our culture, from our institutions to our policies to our communities, were all pervaded by this hypermasculinity and had a real dearth of feminine values, feminine principles. And so I began exploring that. And I at first I did it through Bioneers, and we convened some great panels and explorations of what I called restoring the feminine. And but the other thing that I was inclined to mention, let me see now, that both Maria and Suzanne really raised up for me, is the value of going into the underworld. And so in 2003, I had been cultivating myself for several years, and I had been really looking at how are the various lenses that I have influencing my life? What are the stories, both conscious and unconscious, that I carry that influence how I show up in the world? And how might a dive into the shadow of my own psyche and of women's leadership really help serve my own self-cultivation? And so at that time, I wound up reaching out to two other women who were very experienced facilitators, Toby Hertzlick and a woman named Akaya Windwood, who runs the Rockwood Leadership Institute, or used to. And together, the three of us co-created a 6-day deep dive into what we called Cultivating Women's Leadership. And the arc of the deep dive was really addressed so many of the things that both Suzanne and Maria have spoken to, and you too, Alexis, in terms of helping clarify each woman's own sense of her own purpose or assignment or soul calling, a kind of exercises that were embodied and creative exercises in self-acceptance and self-love, and flipping the mirror from what we'd been taught to what we knew we needed to embrace instead. And then really looking at what is the shadow side of how women have evolved in a masculinized paradigm, and how have we been taught to compete with each other rather than cooperate with each other, and how have we been taught to rank each other and create hierarchy rather than collaboration. And so, and it's particularly resonant to me right now, I think, Suzanne, hearing your story, in that I'm going through a real rite of passage myself right now. I'm in recovery from a hip replacement surgery. And so I'm really spending a lot of time looking at how have I honored my body and how have I dishonored my body? And what kind of healing do I need to do to fully integrate this new metal part of me, that's sort of integrating my ancient self with my futuristic self. But also, as I'm going through changes in my relationship, both with my husband and partner and with this organization that I have been cultivating over the last 30 years, I'm having to look at my own shadow stuff again. And it seems to be a never-ending process. In our workshop, we often referred to it as like peeling the onion skin, and I think when I was in my 20s, I was gifted with studying with a spiritual school that was called Eureka. And what Eureka really gave me was a framework that said, the way I understand myself as a congruent, whole, integrated being is through the integration of my body, heart, mind, and spirit. And that those 4 dimensions of my being need to be in alignment and congruent for me to feel like I'm fully flourishing in what my soul was called to manifest in this life. So part of my journey has been discovering myself as a woman, and then discovering how we as women have some very particular capacities to both heal and strengthen and transform ourselves and each other. And I think several of you have already mentioned being in women's circles. And, for me, I went to a women's conference with a friend, and after hanging out with her all weekend, I realized that the number of times she had referred to how her women's circle had grown her made me decide that by the end of that weekend, I was going home to start a women's circle. And I had no idea what I was doing. I definitely made it up as I went along, But I scanned my whole world of social contacts to understand who are the women I'm really drawn to and that I really want to know more. But because of my busy professional life, I haven't had the time to have friendships with them. And the more I looked at them, the more I saw them, Maria, as people like you who are very dimensional and who are relating to the world not only through the obvious physical manifest plane, but through other dimensions of our wholeness. And so that circle was a tremendous help for me. I also went through a deep inquiry about what leadership means, because around the same time, I started being acknowledged for my leadership with Pioneers. And I knew that I was supposed to be honored and flattered, but instead I felt like, ooh, don't put that label on me. I felt scared of it. I felt like I wanted to deflect it. And I felt like I absolutely did not deserve it and didn't want it. And so that really sparked an inquiry for me where I said, okay, well, maybe I have some inherited ideas about what leadership is that I'm running away from and that are causing me to not feel good about being called a leader. And then the more I explored, the more I found, well, if I have those inherited notions and belief systems, maybe other women do too. And sure enough, I found that we actually hosted the Cultivating Women's Leadership workshops for 12 years. And this year it's in a process of reinvention. And next year it will come out with a completely different name. But it taught me a lot. And in many ways, the most valuable lesson was how powerfully we as women can support and change and hear and see each other into fuller flourishing. But to go back to leadership for a minute, so what I did was actually a whole lot of research. And the way that I researched when I was working on this book, which I think Alexis will give one away later, called Moonrise, The Power of Women Leading from the Heart. And so I had this very practical approach, which was I had already been running Pioneers for a long time, co-leading it, I suppose I should say. And I decided to read through the transcripts of all the leaders that had most inspired me. And after reading scores and scores of transcripts, I began to organize them into patterns and realized that women and some men are reinventing what leadership looks like in this time. And just to touch on some of the high points, the first thing I realized, and this really relates so much to what Maria was saying about self-validation, was that the leaders I most admired and wanted to be like were not leaders who had been given a title or a crown or a graduate degree or a job. They were people who, mostly women, but not all women, who had really decided based on a kind of calling that they really had to address something they saw in the world. And so I began to see this pattern of leading from the inside out, and that there was a need to reverse the polarity, whereas our culture has taught us, behavior first and then it works in. I think we actually have to flip our mindset so that we are cultivating ourselves from the inside out, which to me means identifying what we most deeply love and care about. And then and doing a kind of assessment that's a clear-eyed one of what are our own gifts and talents. And sometimes it really helps to ask friends, and then seeing where those gifts and talents can meet this place that needs reinvention in the world. Because if I've learned one thing from Pioneers, it's that we are in this giant civilizational reinvention. And it includes every aspect of our lives. For me, I think the way that I distill it often is to say that we have inherited a system of broken relationships, and that really what we're dealing with is a need to heal our relations with ourselves first, as Thich Nhat Hanh so beautifully said, and with each other and with the entire living Gaia, Earth. And I feel like I've had the privilege of learning from and studying with a great number of Indigenous teachers. And one of the guiding principles of cultivating women's leadership is a 9-word teaching that I learned from a Peruvian fellow named Oscar Miro Quesada. And I found it tremendously helpful in very practical ways. And I know, Alexis, you keep asking people for what's the practical advice you would offer people? So this teaching is just extraordinary. And for me, it's been kind of a benchmark. He said he actually led about a 6-hour ceremony. And at the end of it, he said, if you remember only one thing from this time together, remember this. Alexis, would you wave to me when I'm at 12 minutes or something? Okay. He said, consciousness creates matter. Language creates reality. Ritual creates relationship. And I'll give you an example before I close of how I've used some of those that I think have been tremendously helpful as I've cultivated my own emergent leadership. You know, I feel like I will probably be cultivating myself until the day I die. I think one of the things we have to shed is this notion that leadership is like an end point, when in fact, as we know, as women, life is circular and probably spiral. And so how do we keep refining and cultivating who we are to show up and bring our best selves to the world? You know, other high points from the Moonrise book that are kind of perhaps obvious, but I say them anyway, are that the people I most admired were leading collaboratively. They were leading from their heart more than from their mind. They were leading from a sense of really relational intelligence, of really understanding how people operate, and going from there. And they were renegotiating power, as Maria alluded to, so that rather than power over, we were talking about generosity and mentorship, and how do we lift other women up, and how do we lift all people up. So my work has evolved into places that I couldn't have imagined. I'm also working with how do we, in a practical sense, address the traumas that in varying degrees all of us carry. Because I think integrating, speaking those stories and addressing them in an embodied way while being witnessed by others gives us an opportunity for integration that's incredibly valuable at this time. And I've become really an advocate for racial justice and beloved community. So that's become a whole nother sort of branch on the tree of my work. So here's an example. I'm also co-leading a workshop that I love called Regenerative Leadership Through Relational Mindfulness. And it's really about addressing the fact that while many of us are called to bring ourselves to this moment, we don't necessarily know how to do it sustainably. You know, the tendency for burnout is just rampant. And we need all great people and great women to be at their fullest capacity for this great turning, what Joanna Macy calls the great turning that we're in, and what Suzanne both so beautifully described as the shift from the 6th to the 7th octave. So here's an example of how that 9-word teaching was so useful to me. I realized in the course of my own evolution that I would get out of the bath in the morning and I would look at my body in the mirror, and I had all these voices in my head going, oh, your hips are too wide, and oh, your feet are so flat, and why isn't your waist smaller, and why does your stomach stick out like that? You know, and one day I went, oh, I am doing myself ongoing harm by allowing those voices to speak to me every day. And so I created a ritual, because ritual creates relationship. And the ritual that I designed was I make myself wonderfully scented oils in the morning. And you can do it with all kinds of essential oils and different base oils. And when I get out of the bathtub in the morning or the shower, I just spend 5 minutes anointing my body and pouring love into all of it, and just quieting those voices. And another example of a ritual I created was that I had a girlfriend say to me on the phone, she said, when are you going to value yourself more than your marriage or your work? And I had this huge light bulb go off over my head, and I went, oh shit, she's right. That's the only way I know how to really hold my own value. And so the ritual I created was that each morning, before I got out of bed and before I really even opened my eyes, I would wake up and I would reflect on the day before, and I would give myself appreciation for everything that I had done that I felt good about. And somehow it, you know, I think it's what Maria was speaking to around self-validation. What I found with both of those rituals was that if you're rigorous and hold yourself accountable and do them every day at the same time for like 6 weeks, 6 to 7, something changes inside. It's like an alchemical transformation. And one morning I woke up and I just knew that I had transformed how I held my own value. And I shifted my rings so that I put a ring from my mother underneath my wedding ring to symbolize it for myself. So I offer you that. And as well as the sense that we are just so much more powerful to affect change in the world than we know and than we tend to give ourselves credit for. So I know that my colleagues on this call actually have a really strong sense of that, but I felt inclined to say it out loud before closing. So Alexis, you've been taking notes, and I'm so curious.
Wow. Well, it was funny. Each time I was like, okay, I want to ask a question about this, you would answer it. I was going to ask you what your favorite ritual is. And so that was really helpful to hear that about, you bringing in that piece of deep self-care and self-love, because it is so easy. And I absolutely can experience this and see women experience this, that, when you're a big-hearted person and you are feeling this calling from the earth to step forward into leadership in this way, it's easy to get burnt out, and so that call back, not only to tend to your grief, personal grief, but the collective grief and the self-love. So that was really helpful that has been woven in. And something that was also lighting up for me when you were sharing that I'd love to hear you talk about, that's absolutely connected to self-care, is can you speak into generosity as a leader and the foundation of generosity? And because sometimes when I bring up generosity, there's a little, like, for women who give so much and spread themselves so thin, there's a little bit of a recoiling. I already am so generous. Can you talk about that difference between true generosity and spreading yourself thin?
Sure. I feel like I may have inherited a generosity gene, because my father was the only Jewish man I ever knew who had a collection of Santa Clauses. And he didn't care what faith they were from. He just loved the energy of Santa Claus. And I love giving gifts. And in a way, I think as I get older, I'm learning to give the gifts more energetically than physically. I'm learning that my attention is a gift, and that giving someone my really full focused attention and reflecting to them the beauty and the power and the excellence that I see in them is a gift. I think I am one of the women who most of my life has been challenged with overgenerosity. And I remember praying when I first set out on this women's work that I could reconcile the difference, that the chasm I felt between self and service, because I grew up thinking service is good, self not so much. And I had a mother who was fairly narcissistic, and so I modeled myself to not be like her. And it's taking me until here I am 61 to begin to learn that self-generosity has to be part of the equation. And that actually, if I don't prioritize care for this instrument in order to bring myself in the best way to the world, not only the body of this instrument, but my heart, my emotions, my psyche, my grief, my all of me, my creativity, that caring for myself actually has to be near the top of my priority list. And then I can show up generously from a full cup. And otherwise, I'm just depleting myself. So, I really resonate with the question. It's a tough one for many of us. And I think it's part of the transition that Suzanne is alluding to, of how do we integrate? Well, we have to integrate by first, there's so much shedding we have to do of the denigrating and devaluing and crap that we've inherited from 5,000 years of patriarchy. In order to really value ourselves enough to say, if I'm going to be of best service, I got to serve myself first. So I'm learning. I'm still learning it, by the way. I can't profess to have resolved that one, but it's big and necessary, I think, for us all. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, Allyson.
There, my friends. Hello there. Can you hear me? I'm unmuted. Oh, God, Nina, it's so great to meet all of you. It is such an honor to be in this grouping. I am just beside myself with the feelings of undeserving, which is really, really great. It's the only way to cause miracles, by the way, practice being undeserving. And anyway, I know that's true for me here. You guys are all such geniuses. But anyway, I wanted to tell you about a time in 2006 when it was Dr. Albert Hoffman's 100th birthday. And in Basel, Switzerland, they had a big celebration. It was really a conference of 70 speakers in Basel. 2,000 people came, and Dr. Hoffman was there. And my husband was invited to speak. Of course, he's so entertaining. His work is so beautiful. Everybody looks forward to his, illustrations of this incredible world that we all experienced and have made in some way, the center or a center in our life. So really the bridge between Alex and I mean, we met in the spiritual opening that psychedelics were for both of us. And so that was the touchstone of our relationship, and always felt like one of the most important visions that we had ever had as artists were out of those experiences, and that was our intention was to fulfill those visions, because what else does an artist want to do but to fulfill the most important images, not like some, I mean, before Alex, I was doing very personal stuff, angst, all the angsty and 20, something. Anyway, it got more about the divine, and our spiritual life became more and more a part of who we were. But anyway, in 2006, we went to the conference. Alex was a featured artist speaker, and there was 70 people on the roster for a big weekend of 2,000 people. One woman was on the roster, and her name is Claudia Mueller-Eberling, and she has always been brilliant genius. She's like the mother of like telling people where these psychedelic plants began and the cultures that they came from. She's a sociologist and a professor. So anyway, she got on because her husband, Christian Ratch, was an author of the Psychoactive Plants book. And that's the way a lot of women get into places of leadership, is through their powerful and wonderfully altruistic husbands. Now, at this conference, two incredible women, Annie Oak and Hidden Mountain, went around with a camera from room to room to visit the women who they felt might have something important to say about psychedelics and might be slightly artistic, articulate or whatever. And they brought their video camera into our room, and I got to speak about my subject, which, I am not a psychotherapist or a scientist in any way, but basically my perspective. So in any case, I predicted things that, research that's going on today having to do with OCD and eating disorders and all of that. I predicted that, in 2006, and now look, it's all going on. So, but anyway, these ladies started the Women's Visionary Congress out of the fact that, no women were like empowered to speak at these conferences that were becoming more and more popular, even in New York, the Horizons, every year. So then 2000, let's see, when Dr. Hoffman became 102, they held the conference again 2 years later. And we were there. And moi, spoke at the conference. And the thing that I spoke on was psychedelic family values. What do you tell the children? And I had to talk about, like, what do you tell the children? And I interviewed probably leading experts on this subject that even teach the subject and are way wiser than I. But because I had a wonderfully powerful husband and he was speaking again at the conference, of course, I also got to speak and to represent families and people. Oh, the thing went on. People were so into this subject that it is now actually a business for somebody. They call it psychedelic family values. And you can see us on YouTube with Zena at Burning Man giving this talk, and when she was 14. So anyway, that is something that there are so many things that women can talk about. And I really, really wanted to credit the Women's Visionary Congress, who I was honored to be present at 3 Women's Visionary Congresses out in California. And then one we did here, a small one that we even did here. And it's just an honor to see more and more women being featured in this psychedelic. I mean, here you have this community that talks about transformation a great deal and how much the change, we are the change, And so gender balance is really, really important. And I've always been a feminist since the 60s. I was serious. That was really an issue that I really understood, that, it's not fair, right? Like, you know that. And it's funny, I found out this year, Simone de Beauvoir, who wrote Second Sex and was really like the revolutionary book that kind of like broke the feminist revolution in the 60s. She wrote that book the year after and during the year that she first smoked cannabis. And when she was asked on TV why she hadn't written that book earlier, because she was in her 40s already, she said, I had never thought about it that way before. I'm telling you, me neither. I seriously, and it makes imbalances ever so highlighted, it does, it really does. You realize, and this is the civil rights movement, and this is all of the imbalances that you see in the world, the rich versus poor, and then there's all of the consciousness around ecology. Well, I think that we're seeing a great many more women in positions of leadership than back in even 2006 when I was, they're embarrassed as men to do panels without a woman on them, because it's kind of like, there is kind of a stigma about it. And I think ever so righteous. And all the good stuff that's going on today about women, that women are coming out and telling about their story. Oh, God bless every one of them. I get chills because I don't like to see, some men coming down. I don't like to see their careers ruined, but I do like, it's not going to happen any other way. The wealthy and the powerful have got to be the ones, because we all see it. And if they can't get away with it, then other people won't be able to get away with it either. So I think it's all for the good. I think it's very hard what we're going through, but I think it's all for the good. I wanted to acknowledge my parents, who were camp directors of a girls' camp. And every summer for 25 years, they empowered 250 women and girls. Just a women's community for 8 weeks, 8 solid weeks. That community of women that I, spent 25 summers with just made me the feminist and the leader, really, that I always was. Chairman of the prom, head cheerleader. I was the leader all the way through high school, all the way through. And in all the ways I wanted to, empower women. I used to teach exercise classes in gyms, I wanted to just, and here we are at COSM. I had to say this. COSM is a duocracy. That means that the people who do the most get the most say. So if you are in dishwashing and you think that we should use some ecological dishwashing soap, everybody's going to listen to you. It's more than likely you're going to get listened to. But, you know, the people who do the most get the most say. And that's Alex and I, because we have always, you know, been the most. And so that's sort of, there's a sort of a hierarchy, but everybody gets say. And that's a kind of leadership that we offer here. We have 28 young people living and working here, and they all are leaders, all chiefs, every one of them. No Indians. We're all Indians and chiefs. That's really the truth. No, they're all leaders, and you look for the quality in their, what calls them, their passion. And if you can find their passion and you can, you know, harness it into, you know, creating a church, they're in. And so they're amazing people, and they all have a lot of say. And that's the way you cultivate leadership. It's what Stephen Covey called the 8th habit of highly effective people. It was the ability to empower the leadership of others. And that's really, we call it servant leadership. Servant leadership is the leadership where, you know, you do whatever you need to do to help other people be the best leaders that they are. Now, do I have another couple of minutes? Because I'd like to just, you imparted with a few of the quick tips on life and leadership. Do you want me to keep going, or should I stop? 2 more minutes. Here we go. 3 ways to inspire. See, if you want to be a leader, you're going to have to inspire. So here are 3 ways to inspire. Create an intention and enroll other people in your intention. Make them feel heartfully connected with you, whatever your intention is. Share that intention with others, and then take action towards your intention. Every day, a to-do list. Take steps, take measures every day towards your intention. And you'll have whatever it is you want for yourself in your life. Right, gals? Yeah. Thank you.
You're the best.
You.
I have a question for you. It's a pretty big question, but I have to ask this question to you. So can you share with us the role of visionary art on the planet right now? The importance of it, the role of visionary art right now with this transition that we're going through.
Well, let's say this. I think visionary art is a context for the love tribe. It's the visual, graphic, resonant representation of a meme, a way of being, which is loving, accepting, and love, acceptance. That's all I can say, really. I mean, you know, just all things are looking toward the light. It's about looking toward the light and creating nodes of light wherever you are, temples and places of light everywhere you are, because the world is going to hell in a handbasket out there. And there's nothing more you can do about it except to produce, create, and manifest light places, light bodies. Be a light body, you know, and then connect with other light bodies like you all. So that's visionary art as a context, because it draws people in. Alex says it's kind of like the Carney Barker, he calls it. Come on in. Like the temples of the world are also gorgeous. You should see Khajuraho with all of those Kama Sutra people copulating all over the outside of that temple. They're carved all over that temple. They're doing the act everywhere, every Kama Sutra pose. And it's like saying, if this is going on out here, come on inside, come on inside. And that's probably what they were practicing anyway. So, but still, whatever it is that you want to portray, if you can, draw people in, then it's community, and then it's love, and then it's anything that's positive you can create in a place of spirit. Mm-hmm. So that's why visionary art is matters at all, because people that make visionary art translate their inner worlds of the divine, their portrayal of the divine from a place of observation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. I've been wanting to hear that from you for a long time. Thank you. I've been wanting to ask you that question.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Oh, goody good.
All right. Okay, so the next segment is so exciting. I want to give another quick break. If we can do a short 5-minute break so we can come back and do question and answers, because I'm sure the audience has questions, and I'm sure you guys all the panelists have questions for each other as well. We started about 10 minutes late. I want to honor everybody's time. So if you have to hop off, I totally get it, but I'm going to keep this open for another 10 minutes if, panelists, attendees, for everybody. So why don't we take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back with another gift giveaway and then question and answers. Okay. So it's 4:15 Pacific Standard. We'll come back at 4:20. Hello, lovely audience. So we're going to enter into the question phase, question and answer. And there is, why doesn't someone, if someone in the audience wouldn't mind, I want to see if it pops up. Is there a raise your hand icon anywhere on, oh, great, excellent. You raise your hand. I want to see if there's somewhere, John, I see that you are raising your hand. I don't know where that went. If I hover over the bottom. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna click on here. Okay, great. I see. Okay. Let's see the panelists, now attendees. Okay. So we're going to give this a shot with the hand raising in a moment. But before I open it up to the audience for questions, I know the panelists, we had so much fun on our pre-show call because we were all talking and collaborating with each other. And you've just all done such an incredibly beautiful job of weaving this wisdom with each other, just riding on the tails of what the speaker before talked about. And it's just really beautiful what is being created here. So I'm going to open it up to the panelists first to see if there are any questions that you would like to ask each other, or even if there's some kind of any comments. I'm going to first open that up to you all. So you can jump in. Yay, Maria. All right. Let's unmute you. Okay, there we go.
Got it. Just hearing the whole wave of our streams of heart mind. What comes to me is this theme of initiation. And I know in Allyson's work, you capture this essence of initiation in some of your art, and it strikes me that the feminine and the masculine energies, I'll just call it, on the planet are going through this complete death and rebirth cycle of initiation right now, and emerging into something wholly different. And I think that we're seeing this in gender fluidity that's birthing in culture right now and in humanity. And that's like the harbinger of what's to come. And it's not so much androgyny as it is this all-encompassing self-realization, I suppose, that we truly are each other. And in the Mayan have a beautiful greeting in Lakesh, I am another yourself. When they encounter each other and look at each other, I am another yourself, like greetings. And so I feel like we're birthing into that. And so I just wanted to name what I was hearing as a thread through each of our, throughout each of our shares is this. I heard for each woman a story of initiation, a story that was very, painful, messy sometimes, with resistance and terror even, and then surrender. And this beautiful gift that we have within us of surrendering, this gift that we've been given in our consciousness to let go and have the big orgasm, death, to die to ourselves, and then to be transformed in the in-between state, neither life nor death, neither living nor dead, be transformed, and then to rise into this light body, into this whole other full spectrum being. And wow. So I wanted to name that, and just kind of, I would love to hear my siblings, sisters, anything arising for you all about this initiation on earth right now.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Maybe
Oh,
chime in a little bit. I've spoken already a bit about this, but I do want to tag on to something, Allyson, you were touching on that connects to, I think, which is intention, or you were speaking at the end. But and the vision of visionary art, where art sits at the edge of evolution, in my view, or let's say the creative expression, the visual expression, as a language that we need. And I think this is really key in the initiation, because we have to be willing to, and this is going to draw on other ways of knowing that are not left brain linear. And the work I do, we work a lot with visual journals and actually starting to be able to see an intention, see ourselves in a new world. Was the wonderful research that was done by a man named Fred Pollock in the 50s, actually, where he was looking at, after the Second World War, what were the cultures, what was the one thing in the various cultures that were able to reorganize out of the brutal war into a positive order. And the one factor was, in all of these cultures, was that there was, I was touching on before, there were a group of people who were able to hold a positive vision in the midst of the disintegration, not because it was easy, not because they were really wealthy and they got to live comfortably, but because they didn't let go of the vision. And one of the things I've found in the work I do with women is that's one very hard, because we don't see a path or how to get from here to there. So it's hard unless I'm going to envision myself in a way in the world that I cannot see how I'll get from here to there, given the relationship I'm in, the finances I have, the job I'm in. But I really invite us all really to do that work. And I think this is where the visionary art comes in. There are some on the planet who are actually giving us some of those images to resonate with. And then we have to see our own image in the future. It's like the future self. Invest in the future self. She's actually calling you forward, like the oak tree, calling, that potentiality forth from the acorn. Just to add that thread.
it's so beautiful. And what it's bringing up as I hear you say that is, thinking about the difference between women birthing human children and birthing a vision. Now, there's so many similarities, but one thing that I notice is the baby is coming no matter what. Baby's coming, and when you're birthing a vision, it takes longer, and we can shut it down at any time. And so it requires this next level of fierceness and support to help the person, the woman, to hold the vision, to remember what it is that she's creating, she's birthing.
Yeah, and the one thing that will happen when you have the vision, and it's a given, and this is the homeostatic function of the psyche, it will pull on everything that's under the surface of the water, which is the old operating system, the old anchor, basically, the old ways, the old conditioned mind, body, heart. Yeah, I could say that developmental trauma body. Mm-hmm. So then often people feel, oh, this is getting so uncomfortable. I shouldn't be doing this. There's something wrong with that. Actually, it's designed to work like that. So then that's where you need these communities of connection, or you work with somebody in particular. You get a holding field to start to metabolize some of those old codes so you can, move more efficiently and effectively toward the intention. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Nina, were you going to say something? Oh,
I was. I think, I was going to say two things. Let's see if I can get them out. I think the question you ask is a really important one, Alexis, and I feel like my image for it is that as women, we have a natural capacity to bridge worlds. And that relates to the dimensionality that Maria was speaking to, and Allyson's quality of bringing in visionary art, and what Suzanne was speaking to about integrating the upper world and the lower world. And what I'm finding right now is life is presenting us with some pretty serious balancing challenges. Because on the one hand, whether it's ecological or political destruction, degradation, and turmoil, it's happening on so many levels that the old systems are falling apart. And the parts of us that want to serve, that want to repair, that want to help, are getting called in all kinds of different directions. And it requires some real inner strength to say, I'm going to give this much of my time and energy and attention to knowing about what's happening and choosing very mindfully where I'm going to put the rest. Because it's hard to resist and co-create at the same time. And of course, that's what we're called to do. As Naomi Klein says, if we don't create and hold the new vision, or co-create and hold the new vision, then too much energy goes into resistance, and it sort of plays into the distraction mentality that's so rife right now. And the other thing that I felt called to share is actually to respond to a question that happened on the chat room way back, I don't know, a million years ago, from Susan Joy, who said this beautiful thing. Where is it? She said, the masculine hierarchical model is so embedded that even men and women who desire to shift to collaboration don't realize when they are undermining the progress. How do we gently support one another in reflection and truth-telling? And I thought I would just share a snippet, which is that I have recently emerged from a period of time with my husband where I realize now that I was sort of falling into a kind of archetypal polarization. And I was so intent on how he needed to change in order for things to get better between us. I'm sure nobody can relate to this at all. And we reached a real crisis point where we knew that our marriage could come apart. And what I realized was that it's a lesson I've learned many times, and it keeps coming back to bite me, is I can only change myself. And what I decided was to totally drop all the voices and all the chatter and all the story that said he was wrong and he needed to grow and he needed to evolve, and simply accept him as he was. And I feel like I have so much more capacity to reach him now. And so I think that's part of what I wanted to respond to your question, Susan Joy, because I think we who see the future world that wants to be born can often get sort of dug in and self-righteous about telling other people what we see or what they should do. And what I'm finding is if you meet people where they are and with incredible kindness, even when you really vehemently disagree, you have a much better shot at getting through to them. There's a beautiful project called Living Room Conversations that was designed by Joan Blades, who was one of the founders of Move On, and she created it so that people who were politically at extreme opposite ends of the spectrum could have a format for learning how to respectfully disagree and hear each other. And I think we as a species are really faced with that. I thought it was just a great question, Susan. Thank you for asking it. I don't know if anybody else wanted to respond to that, but it's a good one.
I'm inspired to just tack on to that. It reminds me of, this is what's arising, so I'm just going to say it. It reminds me of before our beloved Sobonfu Some moved on into the spirit world, when she would lead grief ritual for the community. One thing that I absolutely loved in the midst of my snot and tears and fetal position up at the shrine was seeing her pacing back and forth behind the drummers singing, and with a toothy smile ear to ear as she witnessed everyone really, this is spirit rock, 50 people in attendance or more, just wailing and releasing at the grief shrine. And that I never forgot that. And in all of the years that I've led grief ritual work, I find that has arisen in me now, this celebration to witness people's process just as it is, whatever it is, and that it's not for me to change their experience of life and of how life moves through them. It's for me to celebrate it, because there is a genius in it. There is an intelligence in that, and there is a higher self that is guiding them and each one of us. So I just wanted to name that as well, just in that what Nina just spoke to, accepting our partners or our coworkers or whoever it is, for our parents, for exactly who they are, with a bow of respect. Just like here on the Big Island, where my husband and I moved here in January to live, and we go to the ocean to swim, and sometimes it's a big swell day, and when we're swimming back in, those swells just pummel us against the rocks, as the lava rock, as we're coming back into shore. And there's this way to approach the ocean where it's not like, please don't pummel me on the rocks today as I swim, but like, it's the great and mighty ocean, deep respect to this force of nature. I will be strategic in how I get in and out, I will be respectful, and I will take care of myself, right? I'm going to wear neoprene. I'm going to, do what I need to do in my own energy and my own physicality to take care of myself, and wait for the big wave sets to pass, and then I'll come in, right? So it's the same, just respectful navigation of all the intricacies of life and relationship. Ashe.
Thank you. And that brings to mind of the difference between being defensive and protecting your power, like being in your power and caring for it. That's what comes to mind when I hear that, when I hear all of you. Okay, so I'm going to open up the floor here to our audience members, and I just want to say that we will do our gift giveaway at the end. I forgot to do that at the end of the break. So if you are an audience member, why don't you try, you can either type something in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and speak. We won't see you, but we'll hear your voice. Anybody? All right, let me see. Oh, Lynn. Ooh, unmute. Ooh. Hold on 1 second, Lynn. I'm saying you're talking. Oh, technology. Yeah, for some reason it won't work. Lynn, can you type your message in the chat box? Okay, while we're waiting, Allyson, we've got a great question for you. Can you talk about your travels abroad and the impact of presenting at festivals in front of thousands of people?
Oh my God. Well, it's been an incredible honor. I don't know why people invite us to do that, but I think part of it is because we represent the Love Tribe, and when we get invited, somehow we usually do a talk about sacramental culture, and we acknowledge. I think that by doing this talk, people feel more comfortable about their sacrament, and that they aren't evil. The society having had a war on them, they're starting to come out of that war, and people are beginning to appreciate the benefits that many of us have had in these experiences. So we talk about them openly, and that I think that's been a context for gatherings and context for our community. And it's made it really apparent to us how the need for such places as even, you see it at Burning Man, which finally, bought their own land, and they will eventually be a town. you know, a tribe. People will live there. They haven't figured it all out yet, but they're still 40 years wandering in the desert. They're going to figure that out. But we have COSM, and we wanted to just be a node and a center for that, for the Love Tribe, and it just became clear that that people wanted us to, come and be spokesmodels for that, and we've been honored in many, many cities and a lot of continents. And the other thing that we love to do is to go see sacred sites. So wherever we go, whatever city we're in, we find the sacred sites that are there, and that kind of guides our trip. We've also seen every Michelangelo that's ever been created. So we just go anywhere that you can see it. If you can see it, if it's on the wall of the Pope, we can't see it. But if it's anywhere else, we can go there and see it. And we just follow that trail of sacred sites because we have known since 1985 that was our mission, was to build an enduring temple of visionary art to uplift a global community. So that was our mission for a long time before we ever became a nonprofit in 1996 or an actual interfaith church in 2008. But we didn't know we were going to become a church. We just knew we wanted to build a chapel of sacred mirrors, because we had created the sacred mirrors, and they had been drawing a lot of attention. People wanted to see them, and we got a lot of interest of people that wanted to come in and see the work in our studio at all times of day and night. So we started a monthly ceremony where we figured it would be like an open studio event. So we would have like a full moon ceremony, and we just celebrated our 195th consecutive full moon ceremony. 16 years we've been doing them, and we've never missed. Even though we moved from the city. We had a place in the city for 5 years, then we moved up here to the country. And even in between, people helped us host full moon ceremonies, so we never had to miss one. And it's been a great series, that's been, joined by the equinoxes and solstices, and we celebrate the celestial events. I think it's really, if you want to know how to find the others in your community, start a full moon ceremony and invite your best friends. Just start by inviting the people you know. But before you know it, they'll want to bring guests, and everybody brings like something to offer. So like at our first full moon ceremonies, it was just our friends. And then, but Marie Elizabeth led kirtan. She was brilliant. And then we had our shaman, and he could do some sort of a prayer. We created a despacho, which was our prayer. The ceremonies were to pray for building a chapel of sacred mirrors. That's really what the purpose was to build the temple. How are we going to build the temple unless we draw community together? And that's what our shaman told us. Building a temple is the work of a community. So let's get this community going. That started it. But anyway, what else can I tell you?
That's so, I love what you're saying about find out who the like-minded people in your community are by having a full moon ritual. This brings to mind right when I moved to LA. I was in the Bay for almost 20 years, and I was really nervous about coming to LA and finding community. And this woman invited me to a full moon hike in Griffith Park. And she said it was going to be about 12 to 13 women, and it's going to be this really sweet thing that they do. She's picking it. She had her child, and she's picking it back up. She used to do this. Somehow, this full moon hike, it was right after the election. This full moon hike went viral. It was 13 women. It went viral in LA, and 1,000 women showed up.
Jeez.
And she got wind of it a little bit earlier, and she had a megaphone, but there was no hike. It was just women moving really slowly, and it was 1,000 women. We sat and reflected, told each other how powerful we were, and we all howled at the moon together. And it was this moment where I felt this energetic grounding, like I know I'm supposed to be here. These are my people. But it was such a gift. And I love that you're saying, see it's the full moon. The moon calls.
Because here we are, everywhere on the planet, it's the full moon. I mean, it's moving along, but it's the full moon everywhere. No matter what you believe in, it's the full moon. You know, there's nothing else going on. That whole day is the full moon. And so when everybody is celebrating it all over the world, all the different nodes are like, it's like synapses going off, you know, and it's not like, the New Year's, which is also like that, but that's a Christian kind of agreement. You know, when the New Year's is, you know, January 1st. It's like some construct. The full moon is in the sky for you. It's right there. Can
I add a voice in here too?
Oh, please.
Yeah, I want to say a couple. If I could say something about the other side of that. This is the two moons, and I must say, I host a new moon ceremony. So I'm just going to offer both, because the new moon is the empty moon. You know, it's where the dark. This is the great underworld. So I love the most empty moon and the most full. That both can be really beautiful to honor. But that makes the point. The other point I want to make here, which is about it's already come in the conversation, and I'd love to reinforce, which is the potency of the language of ritual. And it has, I think it is the language, I call it the language of the mysterial woman, or a mysterial way of being. And we have to learn it. We knew some of that language in older times, but never with this consciousness. And what ritual lets us do, however, whether it's full moon, new moon, or morning rituals, rituals that are where we focus our intentions, it bridges between the conscious and the unconscious. And this is key in what we're all talking about here, because the midwifing of these new ways of being require that we are making what the light of the conscious mind cannot see right now visible. You know, we want to find ways for that which is ready to rise into consciousness and expand it to come up body. So I really want to make a case for learning and appreciating ritual again. I teach, one of the things that I find really key is how we enter the day. And Nina, you described one of the ways you do that. And I have very specific practices that women learn to do first thing in the morning, where you really guide consciousness out of the unconscious. And you take the time to create the space from which you want to source your day. And that, can be journaling. There are certain practices I recommend that where there's a sort of unwinding of what comes from the unconscious, and then centering, and then meditating in ways that you create a mindful presence makes an enormous difference. So look, Nina, it looks like you're going to add something there. So maybe, are you?
Nope,
You just
I'm
said,
okay.
Okay, the other thing I could just add, if I could, because there was a question that came in, and can I just carry on with that?
Yeah, I was gonna point to the question, so that's great.
Well, it was a question about the way back. I think it was maybe Holly. As I get deeper into exploring the divine feminine, I've tried talking about my experiences with friends and seem to get a disconnect. Is this something that is best kept to myself or to a group such as this? And I thought that would be a good thing to speak to here, because I think we are, I used, in the programs that I would do, because they were university programs, they were deemed mainstream. And so companies would send people, and they would get these amazing results. Women would go back and be just very, really different. So they would keep sending them but they had no idea what I did. And if they did, I don't think they would have been sending people because we have to use tools and open up languages that aren't the mainstream right now. So I think there is a kind of care to be taken. And what I often found was women would have these profound experiences, start to explore ways of being, or work with archetypes, or work with some of the shadow work, some of these rituals, and then wanted to tell everybody right away because they're having such profound experiences, and also to validate themselves, like, it's okay that I'm having this experience, and then it would go plunk with the person they'd share it with. And that was not helpful for them or the other person who thinks they're in some weird cult, doing blah, blah, blah. or they're going to be taken away from them if it's an intimate relationship, for example. These are new words. Who are you? Who are you becoming? So I think there is a kind of care needed where we let ourselves have our own experience first. And that's going to take something, because we're learning new languages. We're opening up new dimensions of consciousness, new ways of seeing and thinking and feeling and being. And we're just discovering those ourselves. So I think we have to be a little cautious. And then when we do share, to do it mindfully, to do it in a way that is of service, not to try to convince you so that you'll believe, so that I'll feel better, or so that, as Nina was saying, you'll be like me. I can make you change and be like me. So that's my thought in response to her question.
That's great. Thank you, that's great, Suzanne. I'm looking at so I'm reading this one that says, from Holly, I have a hard time looking at myself in the mirror, truly looking, and also letting others look at me. I know this is deeply rooted in insecurity, and I so badly want to let go. Any advice on how to do this?
Yeah, I go back to the ritual thing, but there's another exercise that we did in cultivating women's leadership. And, in your own circle of women friends, or if you have a women's circle, this is something that you might want to institute as a practice of reflecting to each other the beauty you see in each other. Because part of what we did was to create praise portraits. And this was always a highly emotional thing, because women would create their own self-portraits where the instructions were, anything you put on this portrait has to be something you love about yourself. And suddenly we had women celebrating their stretch marks and their birthmarks and their scars and their, the boobs they bought themselves. And they were just fantastic. And, I think part of what we've inherited through the patriarchal culture is a tendency to focus on the negative and to be deficit oriented. And so I think, Holly, that part of what you really can do is just create your own practices of celebrating what you love about yourself. And what you find beautiful in yourself. Because what I've found is, as I've fallen in love with hundreds of women who don't conform to the typical inherited definition of beauty that we've got, we're all beautiful. We're all beautiful. We're just beautiful in very different and unique ways. And so it's a part of our self-healing. I mean, it's a great question you ask, but is to consciously and every day give a little time to, what do you love about yourself? And what do you love about yourself physically, specifically? So often we go, oh, I have the best heart, and I'm a really quick thinker, and, and I'm strong. But specifically, like, what parts of your body do you actually love? And now, I remember the eyebrows that I inherited from my grandmother, and I love them, and it's different. And over time, with practice, that stuff sinks in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would love. Thank you, Nina. Can I add something?
Sure.
So there's a series of books by Eva Pierrakos. She was a full-body trans channel who developed herself during the, I want to say 40s, 50s, 60s. She married a psychiatrist, moved from Switzerland to New York, and they created the Pathwork Foundation. So one of her students, after she passed, her students created these books called the Pathwork Lectures. One is called Fear No Evil. I highly recommend it. One thing that the guide, which is the being that used her vessel to teach, over 300 lectures came through her from the guide. One of the lectures was called The Idealized Self-Image. I highly recommend. You can Google it and it should come up in the archives. So the idealized self-image is this thought that we have these masks that we wear. You can see it as 3 concentric circles. And on the outside circle are the masks that we wear because we think we're covering up this kind of middle circle of ourselves that is fatally flawed or not good enough, or all these negative criticisms about ourselves. So we're trying to hide what is unlovable about ourselves with these masks, which is our idealized self-image, right? But really at the heart, at the core, the inner circle is your pure soul essence. And that's who you truly are. And so in this beautiful opportunity that we all have to look at the mirror and to do some mirror work with yourself around what is my idealized self-image? What am I afraid will be seen? What am I afraid will be seen? And breathe as you ask these questions and look at yourself. Like, what am I afraid of seeing in my own eyes? And just, again, to like name and name and name the lies, the stories, the ideas, the attachments. You know, what are you wanting or not wanting? Love, acceptance, control, safety, you know, all these attachments we have. And see if you can get like in, onion, peeling the onion, to that core of who you really are, and be willing to kind of like sit behind your own eyes in that inner throne and gaze through the windows, you know, your soul gazing out these eyeball windows, to be willing to really witness the light within yourself and the mirror image. And this is true for seeing everybody in our lives. We look for the light. We look for what is truly at the heart of each other. And, you know, rather than the outer protections and defenses, and then the wounding, but then what's at the heart. And if we treat each other and ourselves from heart to heart, core to core, center to center, that's going to elicit intimacy. That's going to elicit more collaboration and the strength we need as a collective to birth the new earth. And it's way easier to forgive self and others from that, sitting on that throne, looking through the soul eyes into the soul of another. Ashe.
Maria, thank you so much. And I think that is actually a really lovely place to start wrapping up. I can't believe how quickly this time went. So I know that there's some more questions in the chat. So I'm going to type in my email address again. So if you would like to send me these questions, I can share them with the speakers. And I thank you all so much for being here. Before we officially close, we are going to do these last giveaways here. All right, so Nina, would you like to share your awesome giveaway?
Sure. We have a copy of my book, a book that I co-edited with a beloved partner called Moonrise, The Power of Women Leading from the Heart. And I think of it as an homage to my teachers. And I've just gotten feedback over the years that people find it uplifting, inspiring, directly useful. And I think it's being used in a number of different college courses. And so if you would like a book, then dear Alexis will tell you how to be the one who wins.
Okay, I'm going to do the same process. So 1 through 10. All right, going in. I just started this book too, Nina. It's rocking my world.
Oh, thank you.
2. Who's the first 2?
Brooke.
Oh, I just thought Brooke. Okay, awesome. Brooke, you won. Excellent. All right, so just send your address to my email, your physical address. Here it is again. Okay. All right. And Allyson.
Yeah. Yes, I am unprepared, unfortunately, but I am offering a poster of my art. It is the poster called, I don't have a picture of it, is what I mean. It's a little bit like this. But anyway, it's like my work, and it's called Chaos, Order, and Secret Writing. And if you would like it personalized, just send in your request.
Beautiful.
I'd be so happy to. We'll ship it right out to you as soon as we know who you are.
Great. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to do it again. 1 through 10. All right. 5. Who's that? I see a lot of 7s. Oh, 5. I just saw a 5. Who is it? Do we not have a 5?
Yes, you do. There it is. Let's see. There's a 5 right up at the top of my screen here.
Okay, if you're a 5.
It says TPREGON to all panelists, 7:58 p.m.
Oh.
You see that?
I think that was for the first book.
That was
though.
for the first one. Okay, so we may have.
No, I don't think you have a 5. No.
Okay, we're gonna have to do it again.
Okay.
All right, one more time, you guys. This is for Allyson. 4. Yep, I just saw 4.
Was for
Magali.
D.
Magali.
Magali.
Okay. Beautiful. Okay, so Magali, if you can email me your physical address, we'll get that to you. Yay!
Awesome.
Right.
So great. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
I really don't want this to end. This was so lovely. But we will close our circle. We're going to close our circle right now. So just to weave together all of this beautiful wisdom and magic that we created here together, I just love to go around the circle here of panelists. And if you can just say one word to encapsulate your experience, how you're feeling right now, whatever comes to mind, we will begin to close. Nina, would you like to start?
Oh, sure. The word that comes to mind is well met. Thank you.
Beautiful. Maria. Ooh. Ooh. Unmute you.
Okay.
There you go.
Yes.
Lovely. Suzanne.
Hopeful.
Allyson.
Transformational.
Blossoming.
Thank you, everyone.
I actually just want to end with this quote from, I was peeking at Nina's book. I was reading the foreword, and this one part by Terry Tempest Williams really stuck out. I'm sure this is familiar to you, Nina. Could it be that the genius of women is our capacity to transform the world through creation, life? What we take in through our bodies and release through birth. This is our art, the art of living. This is our life of giving. We can be fierce and compassionate at once. It is how we create beauty in a broken world. To lead is to follow our hearts. We do it alone and we do it together in the name of community. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Maria, Suzanne, Nina, and Allyson, and everyone who joined us here today. Just keep checking into what emerges and opens for you in the hours and the days and the weeks ahead of you. All right, so can we have a slumber party now?
Hello, Maria.
Aloha.
Bye all.
Aloha.
Okay.
Yeah. Blessings.
Blessings. And there'll be a recording, and I'll get that out to all of you and to everyone who listened.
Super.
Okay.
Thank you, Alexis.
Hey, everybody. Find me. I'd love to hear from all of you. You're all such brilliant women. I love to reconnect with you, Nina, and connect again with you. We hadn't met, some of us, but I would love to, find ourselves in each other's presence again sometime, and know that you are all incredibly welcome to come to Cosm. If you ever find yourself in the New York area, you must come up and see us. And we're having a women's film symposium next week. We had an honoring the divine feminine, like our first year we were here, right after we honored the native people, the Wappinger, with a cairn that we built. Next year we did honoring the divine feminine. So now it's been a few years, but we're doing the women's film symposium next summer. So I'm excited for more women's energy.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Allyson.
Thank you. All right, goodbye, you all.
Thank you.
I have to go back to my class. They're all waiting for me.
Okay. Please.
Love you.
Bye.
I can't. I'm really proud of it. I'm so proud to have been in this group, and I'm going to go back and tell them. You know what they're doing? 15-minute presentations. That's what they do every night. There's 5 every night. It's our painting intensive, and so they get an opportunity to do a 15. And I'm telling them, I'm doing 15 minutes tonight.
Nice.
You see? Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mwah! Okay, goodbye.
Bye. Mwah. Bye, everyone.